I now am connecting the dots, and the quid pro pro is obvious here for cutting me out of the podcast and the farm. Coming up, we have Cole Jones, the CEO and founder of Local Line, back on the podcast for not his second appearance, but his third appearance on the podcast.
All right, Ty, we're into the dog days of July, which means NFL training camp is coming back. I'm getting juiced up for Niners football season. Quarterback is back on Netflix, so I've already binged that already and just getting hyped for football season. Feeling good about the Niners this season. CMC is healthy. Purdy's coming back. Heard Juwan Jennings is asking for a raise, though, so a little wide receiver drama to enter training camp. Keep us on our toes, but feeling good about the year, Ty.
Tim, you're watching quarterback, which is odd because the lineup was just kind of like not that enticing to me. Joe Burrow, Cousins, and who was the third?
Jared Goff.
Yeah, not super excited to me. However, I have other quarterback content for you. My wife and I were have been on a bit of a TV show drought. And so we were kind of like in the depths of Netflix the other night, and we started the Brett Favre Untold documentary.
What a deep cut.
Deep cut. Have you seen it?
No.
It is wild. Brett Favre, not a great guy.
Better football player than guy.
Yes, but I'm pretty excited about Niners as well, Tim. You know, it's best to have low expectations. Not this year. They're sky high. I'm hearing like there was this fantasy report that came out that's predicting they do like advanced analytics and blah, 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 that had the Niners finishing in first in all of the NFC. So I'm like, hopes are up, high expectations, and I can only be hurt.
Yeah, training camp hasn't started yet, but vibes are at an all-time high coming off of such a bad last season. I was probably like a 4 out of 10 excited. I'm back to like a 9 out of 10. Let's get after it.
Definitely in the 9 range. All right, Tim, super excited. Cole is awesome. He is a ag builder and entrepreneur, and he's tackling a really hard problem of how do you scale local food production and local food systems. He's built essentially Shopify for farms, how farms can sell their products directly to people, but he's also built out local food programs for some of the major players out there like Chipotle, like grocery stores. So they're tackling this problem, I think, from multiple facets, Tim, really supported by their overall technology platform. So we get into the updates of rolling out Chipotle's program, and we kind of just riff on a number of items with Cole around local food.
Yeah, it was super fun catching up on the business, and it's easier said than done when it comes to local. It's a nice thing to say, but Cole's actually in the trenches kind of putting these deals together and really trying to like disrupt kind of the traditional model of big stores, big chains are buying from broadline distributors that have volume and have year-round access to produce. And when you go to the local level, it's much more fragmented to market, and the supply chain isn't set up that way. So a lot of education, hand-holding, getting growers kind of into this model, getting buyers kind of accustomed to how you really source local programs. It's a super fun conversation, so let's jump in. But first, a word from our sponsor.
The Modern Acre is presented by American Ag Credit. American Ag Credit is a proud member of the Farm Credit System, which was created more than 100 years ago with the sole purpose of serving the financial needs of farmers and ranchers. From small farms to the largest agribusiness enterprises, American Ag Credit understands agriculture and how to structure customized financial solutions. Just like many of the guests we have on the pod, American Ag Credit recognizes that the evolution of agriculture is inevitable and exciting. Their goal is to be at the forefront of this evolution, partnering with producers to grow their future in ways they haven't imagined yet. To learn more about American Ag Credit and to receive exclusive access to reports from Terrain, a research and insight service of American Ag Credit, visit agloan.com/terrain or hit the link in our show notes. Cole, you're in hallowed ground here. I think this is the third time you've been on the podcast. I think cousin Brad, Cole, who else have we had on three times, Tim? I don't think it's a huge list.
Yeah, it's pretty hallowed ground. The honorary fourth Nuts brother on the pod.
Yeah, that's pretty exciting. Cole, good to see you. Thanks for coming back on.
I actually I wanted to achieve that fourth Nuss Brother designation by the end of the year, but Tim just gave it to me now. So I don't know what to do. I think I get the next 5 months off. I'm good.
Yeah. You're just overachieving.
He didn't clear that by me, Cole. He didn't clear that by that was not pre-cleared. Okay, I think there's still work to be done. Let's actually get through the interview.
Majority rules. He's on the farm with your other brother all day. I think he gave the thumbs up. I think I'm in.
Yeah, maybe I misspoke. We can like hold a family vote on Thanksgiving and decide if we bring Cole on.
Am I being cut out right now? Am I being cut out and Cole's getting the slice of the family business?
Actually, Tyler, we're happy you showed up today. There is something we'd like to talk to you about.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm getting cut out of the farm and as host. The Modern Acre with Cole and Tim Nuss. Great.
Sounds good.
All right. I think something we want to start it really seriously. We're all big fans of the All In podcast, and I think the question that everyone is wondering is: have we reached peak All In? Is All In what it used to be? What are your guys' thoughts?
I don't know. I started like talking to you, Ty, like right around World Agritech when we were there, and I'm like, something's off with All In. Content's getting a little bit weird. It was getting just hyper political, like I guess post-election, and it just kind of like went weird once Sachs went into the administration. They started bringing on guests, and the format has just got a little bit funky, and it seems like it's fallen off a little bit.
Tim and I had the chance to go to one of their events in San Francisco in December, I think it was, right, Tim? And like that actually in so many ways felt like a preview of the peak for me, at least, right? Where I had been, so as a Canadian guy from Waterloo, Ontario, was a Chamath fan through the sort of 2016, 17, 18 era, as I myself was learning about, startups, and he was very active with his fund at the time. And so had always been listening to it and was a fan. But there were these signs. There were signs at the event. I mean, Steve Aoki was cool, but like it was more of a rave than it was like an actual discussion. And there was like these small bits that were maybe previews. So still appreciate what they've done, but yeah, I'd say probably peak All In. Yeah, at this point, unfortunately.
I now am connecting the dots, and the quid pro is obvious here for cutting me out of the podcast and the farm. Is this all in event? It's all becoming clear to me now. I think if I could, my thoughts are I agree with you. I think they used to talk so much about like business models and kind of micro and macro factors in the economy, and it has become just like, I think everyone comes prepared with their little talking points or the bit they want to get out of it, and it's not the same. It's not the same when all four are back together. I think there's like hints of former glory, but I definitely feel. But maybe people feel that way about the podcast, Tim. Maybe did we reach peak Modern Acre? I don't think so. I don't think yet. I don't think so.
You guys are on a tear right now. You guys are on an absolute tear. Every day I wake up and I say, okay, I run one company and I've got one kid. And here's my friends, Tim and Tyler, running multiple companies with multiple children each that find time to work out and read books and have the pod and do all of these other wonderful things. I mean, this is what it means to be the fourth Nuss brother. I need to really up my game.
Yeah, we're excited to have you. Well, let's get into the docket here then, shall we, gentlemen? Let's talk about kind of Chipotle. Last time you were on, Cole, was a little bit over a year ago. You announced kind of this new relationship with Chipotle, running their entire local program. You're over a year into it, so maybe just talk to us about how that's going and just kind of how the evolution was getting onboarded with all their suppliers and execution. I'm sure there were some bumps in the road to get it all propped up, but how are things going?
Yeah, and just like one sentence of table setting for anybody that's listening that doesn't know, at Localine, we're a commerce platform for the regional food system. And so we spend all of our time building tools to try to help family farms, just like Nuss Farms, build direct relationships with their customers. And so in most cases, that is, like you said, like restaurants, like a Chipotle, grocery stores, distributors. In some cases, the actual families, like the CSA, box programs. But we're a software platform that builds tools for those farmers and then does a lot of work with the buyers on the other side, trying to help scale their local programs. So that's what we do. And yes, Chipotle was the first sort of nationwide customer that we announced back in 2013. And we took a year, it was about 10 months specifically, to deploy across their entire produce business for all of their growers and all of their DCs. So at this point now, throughout parts of the year, you'll have local produce from the farms that are, on local line actually showing up in all, 3,700 of the, I think it's about 3,700 Chipotle locations in America right now. So took us a year and then, have been ramping it, scaling it since. We just published a success story with Chipotle. They sourced over 47 million pounds of local produce through our platform last year, which was a big win.
And walk us through the business model of how this works. Chipotle is contracting with you to deploy their program. Are they paying a SaaS platform? Like how does all this work actually?
Yeah, the way that it works, generally speaking, the way we're monetizing on the buyer side of our business, so for the Chipotles and some of the other grocery retailers and restaurants that we work with, is on a volume basis. So it depends on two things. It depends on, one, the amount of volume that they're purchasing on an annual basis. And then it also depends on their supply chain structure. So normally either the products are flowing through a distribution center, or in some cases, with more on the grocery retail side of the business, there are direct to store deliveries. So there are farms that are going direct to each store and bypassing the distribution center. But basically it nets out to a volume. On the farmer side, it's a flat subscription fee. So the farmer can join our platform and they get two things. They get all of the tools that they need to sell to their own customers. Think of like Shopify for farmers. And then they also get plugged into this marketplace that gets them exposed to all of the other buyers that are looking to build direct relationships with farmers. So it's a flat fee on the farm side, volume based on the buyer side.
Cole, talk a little bit about like getting growers set up to kind of distribute in new ways. Like we're going through this, talking with you about our farm, where historically we haven't sold directly to a food service company or to a retailer. We're working through kind of processors, marketers. So it is kind of step level changes in terms of operation. Like how do you go about kind of doing that hand holding, whether it's food safety or process, getting growers, like net new growers plugged into these programs?
Yeah. So two things, I guess, that sort of like factor into this. So more and more, I would say, of our business today is working with growers that traditionally were not doing exclusively like direct to customer sales, that now are sort of saying to themselves, not dissimilar to some of the journey that you guys are on, like what is actually the best way to grow these products and get them to market. Your post earlier, Tim, to like, why are there watermelons from Mexico that are up here right now? And like, we are growing, tons of them here in California. So you're right. You got to be a little bit more hands-on with growers to educate them on what is required to actually do that. So we're a software company, but not everything is software, right? Not everything has to be this like super scalable, hands-off, nobody touch anything. Relationships really, really matter. And so we've got a team of people that actually work with these growers and start to talk to them about what's required. So honestly, dude, some of it is education. The other side of it is just moving slowly. So as hopefully we'll talk about it soon, but a couple of the things we're working on with you guys is just start slow, find the path that works. And then as everybody gets a little bit more comfortable, you can scale it up. Nobody expects you to be able to change, 1,000 acres of production overnight and change exactly how you're working, how that actually gets to the customer. But you can start small. You can find the right customer that's the right fit. And then you can get more comfortable and, work up to something over time and make more investments along the way.
Cool. What have you learned through this process? And specifically, I know you've learned hundreds of things, but like about local, regional food systems as a solution. Like I think that a lot of people can get behind local. What have you learned about like the headwinds with retailers and how they're procuring product? Like, do you think that this, if I can put it succinctly, do you think that this is something that is fully solvable, or is it always going to be a hybrid approach? Like how have you evolved your thinking around local as a solution?
Trying to think of the best like 30-second answer, not 30-minute answer, right? Because there's a lot that goes into it. But look, we don't advocate and say like okay, 100% of our diets need to sort of be procured, within the state that you live, or like within the country, or something like that. But anybody that spends more than 5 minutes even just looking at what is happening in our food system can agree that there is a structural imbalance with the way that we grow and distribute our food here. Why is it the case that the food that is grown the closest to you is the hardest to access, and in some cases is the most expensive? That seems just like at a fundamental level a little bit silly. And with the kind of technology that we have today, that feels like a solvable problem, and it is worth solving. And so, yes, I guess, look, if you're a retailer, same as for you guys on your farm adapting your model, it doesn't happen overnight. You just get on a path, and over time, we can work with you to reveal more of what's in your local area and growers that are a fit. We can shorten those supply chains. We can remove the intermediaries. We can build more direct relationships, be more proactive on contracting, more proactive on what's the growing practices and what is involved there. The relationship is a very, very important part. And so what we know is that we produce more than enough food in America to feed the population, right? And then some. But it is strange sometimes that we export a bunch of bell peppers to Mexico, and we also import a bunch of bell peppers from Mexico. And like, maybe there's actually a more efficient way to build that market that benefits our farmers, that benefits, people with healthier products, that benefits the economics, the actual rural economies. And so there's probably a better model. And we feel like, the right technology can materially re-engineer how the food supply chain works, and that is the path that we are on. But yeah, as to like a percentage of what we should eat could be local, I really don't know. That's not exactly how we think about it. We just want to see a vibrant farming community in America, and probably the best way to do that is give them excellent access to sell to our grocery stores and our restaurants.
Also want to chat a little bit about kind of regenerative. That seems to be like so polarizing. Like when you scroll LinkedIn, everybody has an opinion on how farmers should be producing, of like conventional farms get demonized and it's regenerative organic or the highway. And I think there's a lot of nuance that's missing in the space on what's really important, what's more sustainable. Like would love to kind of dive into that on your kind of approach to how farmers are producing food and what's resonating with your retail customers or food service customers.
Yeah, I think many people in ag are just sort of naturally skeptical anytime that you hear about something that feels like it's this silver bullet sort of, ultimate solution for the entire, ag economy. And that, on principle, I think regenerative is great. I think there's an incredibly amount of like good things about it. But look, I spend my day on the commerce side of this, right? In actually what the buyer wants, where they're going to buy. And I know what it takes to make $1 for the farmer. And so it is frankly just like kind of fantasy land to think that a farmer is just going to wake up and say, you know what? I'm going to do regenerative because it's like a wonderful buzzword and everybody's like talking about it. The farm still has to make money, right? And you got to make investments. There's a J curve to these things in many cases. So net, I do think that it's a positive. But anytime that people in the industry or like, investors or other people that aren't farmers, anytime they say something different than our farmers that we actually like talk to every day, immediately you're just kind of like, there's probably a little bit more than meets the eye on, whether this is just blanket good or blanket bad. So our stance is normally, as I said earlier, the relationship really matters. You want the buyer and the seller to have as direct of a relationship as possible. If that means that together they can work towards more regenerative growing practices, that's awesome. But at the end of the day, like someone's got to buy it, right? Like the market is only so big as there is demand for it. And that's maybe where there's probably a little bit more room for some nuance than we have been seeing historically.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's such a good point that is like so missed so often in these conversations, is just like, let's go down to just commerce and buyers and sellers. And like, yeah. It's kind of, it's so fundamental that it's overlooked. But I think it makes a ton of sense. I love that commerce lens that you have and that you're focused on. And then the relationship building, I think, makes a ton of sense on the commerce piece, how are you seeing? Because I think like, why is the system the way the system is today, right? Like, I think it's easy to just complain about the system, but I think the system's also just set up in such a way that it just incentives, right? And I think like right now, you go in a grocery store and you have, you brought up the point of you're going in the grocery aisle and you're seeing country of origin all over the place, even though maybe right next door that's being grown. What are you seeing in the economics of this situation of like, does selling locally mitigate the higher cost of production because of savings in logistics and freight? Like, what are you seeing in the market right now of like from an economics perspective?
Yeah. So two comments on that. So, okay. Yes, I think it's, it's a nice idea that we can all sort of like sit back and finger wag at, the grocery stores and be like, no, like, don't buy these products from these places. You should like do so much better. And, I promise you 9.9, if not 10 out of 10 people that are doing the finger wagging have never actually run a grocery store. Like the whole industry, guys, the whole industry is low margin. So these businesses, they gotta make a dollar. They have to run a profitable operation. And it just so happens to be the case that the way for them to do that historically is that it's been easier to work with a handful of distributors that for they themselves, low margin, easier to source from larger growers in far off places that can procure the volumes that they need. So yes, Tyler, incentives is the right word to use. And it's also just like them, they don't have the luxury to sit down and try to go build what Local Line is building every day. That's why we've built it, so that we can make it easier. And I do think that's what ultimately has to happen. If we're going to reach the potential of our local food systems, it's just got to be easier and better, than the alternative. And that's the bar that we set for ourselves, is to make it easier and to make it better, not just to make it like something that we can all put pressure on them to do for some, moral or like societal reason to go and, source these things. It actually just has to be really good business. So that's sort of point one. And then, point two on the economics. Yeah, the shorter supply chain matters a ton. But also back to that relationship. So much of the ambiguity that farmers have to deal with is, where am I going to sell my product after I grow it? And do I know if I'm going to even be able to sell enough and at what price point? And, you want to be able to figure that out over the course of the season. But if you're on a platform like Local Line and you have very direct access to those customers, you can have those conversations and you can get clarity at the very start of your season to say, okay, here's what I'm planting, here's what I'm growing, here's what I'm doing. That actually takes a lot of risk out of the system, and as a result can bring price points down as well. So the ability to build a direct relationship and then be able to shorten that supply chain are two things that move the needle on the economics. The highly nuanced point is that it does kind of depend per crop. So I will say that like just stuff that's handpicked, it's just harder in America. We pay a lot more. There's more laws, there's more regulations. A place like Mexico or like other areas where things are grown, right? Like you can probably pick your cherry tomatoes at a more affordable rate than you're going to be able to do here. So again, I'm not sure it's like an everything, but crop by crop, relationship by relationship, there are sort of pockets where you'd be quite surprised how competitive you can get the pricing.
Cole, can I lob over an unsolicited feature request or business idea for you that I think you could build into the platform?
It's solicited, actually. I want you to hear this feedback. Absolutely.
Here's a new shiny object. So something I've been thinking about is for like growers of our size that are kind of medium scale. We work with large processors, large marketers, have these relationships where our buyers work with a network of buyers, say, 10, 20 growers that are all growing tomatoes for the same processing plant. There isn't really a software that exists to kind of facilitate those relationships. It's all kind of pen and paper, emailing contracts back and forth, like, what are your plant dates? Send me your field maps. It's very kind of like old school, the way that we navigate these relationships with our buyers. So I think a big opportunity kind of in vertical SaaS for a company to kind of fill that gap. It's not necessarily like straight local, but it's kind of filling this intermediary gap for kind of contracting and kind of that B2B grower model.
I would love to do something there. The problem is I don't know enough about it. Where like the reason that our model is what our model is largely born out of me starting Local Line in my dorm room as a university kid, connecting Mennonite farmers in my university town with chefs on King Street, which was our main strip downtown. So that was like the thing that I learned and kind of knew and ran with. I need the, Tim Nuss advisory services in order for us to tweak what we have to apply to the processor or the manufacturer, some of those more intermediary steps. We are getting a little bit more exposure to food service. So I can't name names, but like we are just doing some really interesting work right now with a few sizable food service distributors and learning a little bit about what that looks like, which is somewhat like a little bit adjacent to what you're talking about. So who knows, maybe at some point down the line, yeah, we can do that.
Yeah, tap us in when you're ready. We got some ideas.
Tim, why don't you just vibe code that over a weekend?
I'm still working on my first project that has failed numerous times on Replit.
Tim's been promising me a shiny new project for 2 months now. So
I actually spent like 2 hours on a Monday tie and still have gotten nowhere. I'll share the master file with you. Yeah.
Coding, I hate to say it, Tim, dude, vibe coding's not even the hard part, man. That's not even the hard. You actually got to stand up a real product and get real customers and get any semblance of scale. That's when you actually kind of have to know what you're doing.
We don't worry about that.
Yeah, one problem at a time.
You really should build that at some point, though. Sell it to like Christopher Ranch and Morningstar. Like I send the same information, like totally to like all these other buyers.
I don't know. We could even go one step earlier than that, where like I text you earlier about the watermelons and you're like, well, it just all goes to Perry and Sons. And so part of me is like, well, why don't we have Perry and Sons yet then? Because then we can go backwards to the growers they work with. And then we can also go forwards to the intermediaries or to the retailers that they themselves work with. So there might be an angle there.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about the grocery side of things. You obviously have been implementing the Chipotle program. How is grocery kind of set up and structured different than working with a Chipotle?
Grocery is really different in a few senses, where on the restaurant side, they have a set menu. And so there's like a fixed number of items that they need for that menu, and they tend to need them in more higher volumes. And so typically speaking, they're going to work with a fewer number of farms, but they're going to order more volumes from them. And it gives them the chance to build fairly deep relationships. On the retailer side, it's different. So on the grocery retailer side, I think the stat, I could get this wrong here, but I think it was 30,000 SKUs, like unique SKUs on average at the average grocery store. Is stocking. So like, a lot, way more than you think. But what that means is they have lots of different growers seasonally that they're working with in the produce side. But then there's also these other departments where so we do a lot of work with Tops Markets, which is a 150 store grocer in New York State. And they use our program a lot for Center Store. So this is like local sauces and jams and, snacks and things like that. So things you find in the Center Store. There's deli, there's seafood, there's meat. There's a lot of different moving parts. And then on top of that, I sort of hinted at it previously, but in some cases, the growers are doing direct store deliveries. Not everything is going through the distribution center. So you can think of it more where there's a lot of growers going to a lot of different places and stores. It's like this little, bee's nest of activity on a weekly basis for these weekly drops. And so, yeah, in that case, our model is used, I would say, more intensely, where there's individual store managers and category managers that are placing orders. There's, different orders going to different farmers at different times. We do a lot to simplify the incoming logistics and sort of organize how that's going to work for the store. Same thing with the payment flows. All of that happens through our platform as well. But the grocery side is pretty fascinating because it's not uncommon for them to be working with 50, 100, 200, 300, individual farmers at some point over the course of the year across their stores.
Cole, we've talked a lot about like kind of North American dynamics, but you're an international platform. You've added growers in, I think, 14 countries now. Maybe talk to us about kind of the reason to go global. Is that kind of proving out the business model internationally scale? Like, are investors wanting to see kind of global expansion, or how do you think about kind of getting out of the North America market?
No, most investors advise us against this, which I think they're totally wrong on. But the classical is sort of like nail it before you scale it, and I think that's probably generally true. I think in our case, the way we built up our business in North America is by getting the farmer first. You've got to build enough critical supply that it actually makes sense for you to go and work with a large retailer like a Chipotle in order to be able to provide them what they need. And so our strategy internationally is the exact same. We are starting with the farmer, so the Shopify for Farms tools, right? And that is used by, like you said, Tim, farmers in 14 countries around the world. We didn't, and then, once we get up enough density, eventually you sort of turn on that buyer side, but you need some early sort of incubation time to build up that farmer network, get the word of mouth going, build enough density. We were intentional in the early days of building the product to get in all of the translation tables, currency, time zone, taxes. Those are kind of like the 4 things that you got to get right. It wasn't really on our mind, but hey, as it turns out, farmers in Slovenia, where we actually do have 30 or 40 farmers in Slovenia right now that are real power users of the app, they have the same problems as the farmers over here. Everybody wants to find a better way to market. The onboarding is the same, the pricing is mostly the same. We've done a little bit of localization, and we still have our normal support hours over here in North America, and we've sort of made that work with our international customers. But it's been really, really encouraging. They find us online. It's not like this concerted effort for us, but just, farmers are looking for solutions, and we're pretty discoverable online. They find us, they come on, they get onboarded, and we do the translations, for them, the language translations and currency, and they're off to the races. So we've been pretty happy about how it works. Yeah, we've got farmers in a lot of European countries and Australia and New Zealand as well.
And when you say they're discovering you, is that SEO? How are they finding you?
Yeah, it could be SEO. There's a few other. I feel as though one of the things that we did right in the earlier days was we built some pretty good partnerships with basically like farming influencers, right? So people, sort of popular farmers in our space that other growers look to and listen to, that would, use Localine for their own farms and recommend Localine. And so these people actually have more of an international audience than you think. And so that's how we got our first set of growers in Australia. And then, organic, like SEO is absolutely part of it. We produce a ton of content, put it out there for free, try to be as helpful as we can to growers. And last week we onboarded a farm in Estonia. They found us online, was looking for a solution, and nothing comparable over there. Running his CSA now using our software over there. So it's not as though that market per se is super hyper important to us, but you do need time in market to get the farmers. You guys know it's brick by brick by brick, build the brand, deliver the service, build a good reputation. And it just takes a few cycles to do that, which is why we want to get to these places early.
Well, Cole, this has been a ton of fun catching up on things. Honored guest coming back for the 3rd time. We'll have you on next year, maybe for the 4th, Pete. I don't know if we've had a guest on 4 times, but excited for that. And as we wrap up, how can listeners get in touch with you and connect with Localine?
You can get to our website, which is localine.co. Our phone number is right at the top. Our email is at the top. So please, if you actually are a grower or a buyer and you feel as though we can be of service, don't hesitate to reach out. I am myself am on X, as it is now called, and LinkedIn and all of the other platforms. First name Cole, last name Jones, and very happy to connect with anybody else.
So Ty, what do you think?
You hit on it in the beginning, Tim, but so many people have opinions about local or organic or regenerative, but there's a very small subset that are actually doing stuff and building things on the ground. And Cole is one of those people. And just talking to him about local and regenerative and organic was just so fascinated. My favorite point was his about at the end of the day, let's just look at the commerce. Let's look at the buying and selling and see and infer what that means in terms of what people are willing to spend money on and buy and transact on in terms of how people grow. And so I think that was really insightful. And I think more people need to hear some of these on the ground conversations happening between growers like you and ag tech entrepreneurs like Cole. So that was money.
Hope you guys enjoyed this conversation. Hope everyone's getting excited for football season. We'll be back soon.